Welcome to the Summit U podcast. For more information, go to summitchurchnw.com.
So I want to start off with a question. You know that moment when you look at something and you kind of tilt your head and you just know that what you're looking at is not straight. It's not level. Like you're at your friend's house, you're eating dinner, you see a picture on the back wall, and you're like, what kind of monster? And you're kind of like, I have a tree in my front yard that's been doing this. I walked past this tree in my front yard, and I've been kind of looking at it like, why does it look like that? It's all like kind of bent towards the sun in a funny way. When I was a kid, we sang this song in Sunday school where we said, He is the vine and we are the branches. And when you said branches, you'd make a funny shape. So it would be like, He is the vine and we are the branches. And I'm looking at this tree like it's doing the song. It looks funny. And I'm walking past it constantly. And eventually I pull my wife outside and I'm like, Melody, doesn't this thing look funny? And she's like, yes, it does. I've been telling you this for weeks. And like a good husband, I'm like, no way. This is the first we've talked about this. So I finally did the thing this last Friday where I went to Home Depot and I got everything I need to set this tree up correctly. I got the tree pole, I got the tree straps, and I made it so that it's actually like a nice canopy. I got Melody, and we both just looked at it and went, yeah, that's right. Because as it turns out, this tree needs to have the right kind of posture so that it grows the right kind of way and bears the apples we want it to bear. Because good posture turns into good fruit, which turns into good growth, and it's all just right. This is a thing for trees, and this is a thing for people. We all know this intuitively, that if you exercise with good posture, you end up feeling good, like you're sore, but it's good soreness. Whereas if you exercise, if you are a runner or if you're deadlifting or whatever, and you do this with bad posture, you will be very cranky the next day. And you're not going to feel good, and it's just going to be in your mind that you did that thing with bad posture. This is in our bodies. Jordan Peterson is a famous psychologist, and he, in his book, 12 Rules of Life, says this applies to our minds as well. Jordan Peterson says that the very first rule of life, he says, is to stand up straight with your shoulders back. He says, when you stand in this posture, the fruit that you are growing will be confidence and self-assurance. Jesus today wants to say it goes a step further, that there is actually a kingdom posture that when you step into it, it will grow kingdom fruit. Jesus says, you know this dynamic all around you, that right posture turns into right growth, turns into right fruit. He says that's everywhere. That's just a human thing. That's not even a follower of Jesus thing. That's just a human thing. He says, when you follow me and you take on my posture, you will see real kingdom fruit. So if you are taking notes today, that is the idea, just front and center. Kingdom posture grows kingdom fruit. Today we will be in Matthew chapter 7. If you are taking notes, if you have a paper Bible, you can start turning there. This is the famous passage on asking, seeking, and knocking. When we get deep into this study, what we find is this posture of Jesus that we can step into, and it's like a proverb we can live by all of the time. So I'm excited to get into this. It's Matthew chapter 7. We'll be in verse 7. And this passage is really, really special to me because 7 years ago, I got to preach out of this passage for my very first sermon ever at a church called River City Church in 2019. And it's really sweet to come back around and revisit this because this is a space where God did a lot in my heart. I'm excited to get into it. In the top of my mind, I just actually want to honor my parents-in-law right now. 7 years ago, Bert and Annette were at that church with me, watching me preach and just like being in the sidelines cheering me on. And you guys are here today. Everyone should look at them. They're right there. Someday, if I am blessed to have kids-in-law, I hope to support them the way you have supported me. Matthew chapter 7, asking, seeking, and knocking. This is Jesus at the beginning of the end of the greatest sermon of all time. This is what Jesus says. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others as you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. Ask, seek, and knock. Have you ever noticed that those things get increasingly intense as they go on? Asking is like, I could just ask you a question. Seeking is like, I've got to involve my feet now. I'm going to hunt you down. I'm going to find you. And by the time you're knocking, you're just like banging on the door. My aim today is to show you that this posture of ask, seek, and knock, when we take it on, can yield all kinds of kingdom growth and kingdom fruit in our lives. As I thought about it this week, if we take on the posture of Jesus that we're going to think about today, I believe that a number of kinds of fruit can exist in your life. For example, you could grow in your ability to offer wise counsel. Like literally the quality of advice, if you pick up this posture, could grow. You could grow in your listening skills. God hears all of our prayers. He is the master of listening. You can grow towards him in that direction. Or you could become what is called a non-anxious presence. This is a term from the world of family systems theory, and it bundles up a bunch of ideas. A non-anxious presence is like emotional steadiness. It's like self-differentiation. You can see where you end and another person starts. It's thoughtfulness, it's kindness, it's approachability. All of these things are coming from this posture that Jesus has for us. My conviction is that this is the climax of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is rounding around to the end here. He's bringing all these ideas together, and he's showing us the light at the end of the tunnel. And it looks like radical dependency, radical humility, and radical love. When we purposefully take on the posture of Jesus, the opportunity for heavenly fruit is just huge. So here's the plan for today. Within asking, seeking, and knocking, I want to show you that there is a horizontal dimension to this. There is a version of asking, seeking, and knocking that applies from you to other people, the people all around you. I want to show you that asking, seeking, and knocking has a vertical dimension to it. There is a version of this that applies from you to God. But I want to demonstrate to you that that last verse is not random. You read asking, seeking, and knocking, and then Jesus drops the golden rule, and it feels like, I don't know why that's there. That feels random. I want to show you it's not random, but it is in fact powerful. That when we lean in to the way Matthew put this thing together, there is goodness and there is life. So let's start with the horizontal dimension. If you've got your Bible open, look back at verse 7 with me. Notice with me here, when asking, seeking, and knocking are initially introduced, these things are not immediately about prayer. This blew my mind this week. What I'm about to share comes from Dallas Willard's book, The Divine Conspiracy. This is actually Josh's copy, so if you want it, just ask me for it. I'll give away his book to you. I cannot recommend this book enough. As a whole, chapter 7 is all about navigating the tricky situations in life. Jesus has been talking about this for a while. And here, to get us into the mindset of verse 7, here is a quick recap. Since the beginning of the chapter, Jesus started by talking about not condemning others. He says, do not judge or you will be judged. He skips down a couple steps and he talks about what it's like to approach a brother or sister who is off the path a little bit. He talks about specks and logs. And then he talks about this really interesting concept, Josh hit on this last week, about not forcing our good things on other people. There's a really real human tendency towards this. he says, like, don't cast your pearls before pigs. When you get to verse 7, you should assume that Jesus is still talking about nuance in relationship. This week, I got into the habit of calling this the ask, seek, and knock proverb, because if read by themselves, verses 7 and 8 really read like a proverb. They read like a proverb on persistence. So do this with me. With this in your head, with all the context, let's read verses 7 and 8 again. And imagine this is out of the book of Proverbs. Like, even imagine this is King Solomon speaking. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be open to you. This is the picture of somebody who isn't giving up. This is a person who is coming after you. They are hefting things up. They have done the asking thing. They're seeking you out. They're banging on your door. This is a person who badly wants connection. And so I want to raise the question to us this morning. We're all familiar with asking, seeking, and knocking. If you've heard this before, you've probably thought of it as prayer. What would it look like if these things applied to our relationships with each other? What would that look like? I think it would look like being quick to listen and slow to speak. My conviction is that as followers of Jesus, when we grow in our ability to listen well, we are growing in a kingdom mindset. This is like heavenly fruit that can pop up in our lives. So as I thought about how this works, my mind was drawn to a tool I learned a couple years ago. I want to show you this. This is from the world of person-centered therapy. This is a bundle of tools that are called your OARs. You can stick them on the screen for us here. OARS. This has been a very helpful tool for me, and I want to offer it as a very helpful tool for you. In a conversation, as it is your turn to speak, you just rip through these steps. Jesus is telling us throughout chapter 7 that the human tendency, the way of the world, when we have like a conversation with someone else where we want to see a change, he's saying the way of the world is to condemn, to force, to manipulate. He's trying to teach us something else. My conviction is that it's going to look a little bit like this. So I think this is one of those moments where it's a little bit better to show than tell. So let me give you an example of a way I've seen this play out in my life recently. Melody and I recently celebrated our 10-year anniversary, which, thank you. Yeah, feels good. Been married a long time. We got to go to Maui on our 10-year. It was dope. It was very fun. One of the things that's really surprised me, but also honored me, is that a change in the last year is that 2 different couples have approached me and Melody asking us to be their premarital counselors. Yeah, someone went, ooh, and I'm like, yes, I feel that. It's one thing when it's just me applying wisdom to my own relationship. It's a totally different thing when someone else is looking at me and I'm like, here's how you go through a relationship very well. Follow my advice and it'll go well. So, I think this is one of those times where it was so powerful to say, I actually do know how to do this. And it's through OARs. So here are some examples. One of the most common things Melody and I found ourselves doing in premarital counseling was helping people think through recent fights. Like sometimes these are full-blown wars. Sometimes these are just like border skirmishes. But in the life of the couple, one of the most helpful things they can do is process in the company of wise counsel the way things went and how they might change coming up. So in the example in my head, we're sitting with the couple and they're talking about a recent border skirmish they had. And in my mind, I have in my head like, okay, I know which one of you is right. I know which one of you totally messed up. You're right. You're wrong. I'm letting you know. There we go. Next topic. And I have to remind myself, like, that is not how people change. People do not change just by being told or forced or manipulated. People change when they can walk thoughtfully through what happened and be led by the Spirit. So, trying to walk humbly in this, I turned to the person who I thought was at fault, and I asked, hey, what was your experience in this? And this person, as they're speaking, what I'm realizing is that this person is not coming at this from a place of like pride, or they're not coming at this because they like had evil in their mind. It's coming from a lot of pain. They're describing like just hurt in their life. And I feel this conviction from the Spirit as we're sitting with them that my initial plan to go in with correction was misaligned. Rather, the next thing I should do is breathe some life into them through affirmations. So by the time it gets to my turn to speak again, what I find myself saying are things where I highlight their character and effort and small wins, where I'm saying like, I can see that this has been really hard for you. I can see that you are carrying a lot right now, and that's hard. But can I just commend you in the middle of this, that you are staying in it, that the way you are prioritizing your relationships still is good. And this is like a far cry from the thoughts I originally had. You can just see in this moment, when you get to the point of asking a good question and affirming the person, like their shoulders drop, they're able to take a breath, and they can experience some lightness. And to my surprise, this person starts saying the things I initially thought, where they're like, I know that I overreacted. I know that I stepped across boundaries and I lost my temper. And I'm standing there like, yeah, totally. By the time it gets to my turn to talk again, I just move down to the next step and I reflect what they're saying. I say, it sounds like you've got a really good sense of where things went sideways for you. And then by the end of the conversation, I go down to summary where I say, okay, here is what I'm hearing. You guys had a dust up. It's coming from a lot of hurt, but you're able to own the things that you like can own. And what you're working towards is understanding and listening and showing kindness to each other. And then you just turn it right back up to the top and you go, what kind of specific things do you think could be learned here that you want to bring into the next time something happens like this? And then the whole conversation just restarts in a really beautifully helpful way. So this is why I talk about ORs. I think that this is what ask, seek, and knock looks like when it's rolled out at a person-to-person level. The posture of the world says condemn, force, manipulate, accuse, just let them know. And I think that the way of Jesus here is actually one of humility, where you can look at a person and say, I've been there too. I am not better than that, but I know the one who is. So would you walk with me as I walk towards him, and hopefully we can find some goodness together. It is humility, simple, powerful posture of humility. Jesus' first rule of life would be like, open your hands and fix your eyes on heaven. When you do that, you will grow in the direction of the kingdom of heaven. You won't feel like you won an argument, but you will feel like the kingdom of heaven was brought to bear right in front of you, and that's amazing. We get the best example of this in Jesus. I mean, High King of the universe, who hears our prayers, is just the absolute goat of asking questions. Have you had a moment in your life where you felt like God asked you a question that hit straight, like it hit a nerve in your soul? And then you spend weeks or maybe months or years processing through the thing that God asked you. We feel echoes of this all throughout the Bible. God, to Adam and Eve, said, "Who told you you were naked?" To Cain, he says, "Where is your brother Abel?" Later, he asks Job, he says, "Job, where were you when I was laying the foundations of the earth?" In the New Testament, to the disciples, he says, "Who do you say that I am?" Later, he says, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" God asks these questions that get to the heart of our intentions. You are invited to imitate Jesus as you become the person you were created to be. It may not feel natural, but you can adopt this posture of humility and say, let's walk towards Jesus together. And in that posture of humility, that is how the branches of your life get turned into a beautiful canopy. And this is how you grow well, and this is how you bear kingdom fruit. That is the horizontal dimension of this. In other words, our relationships with each other. And I want to take you to the vertical side of things. In verses 9, 10, and 11, Jesus takes this ask, seek, knock proverb, and he turns it to God in prayer. Here's what Jesus says. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? This week, Pastor Blake dared me to try this on my kids. This is a 100% true story. I am not making this up. On Wednesday morning at 7 a.m., I was standing in the kitchen, and my beautiful baby girl, Willow, 6 years old, walks in early morning and is like, "Daddy, can I have a marshmallow?" And I said, "Oh, no, sorry, honey, you can't. But I've got this rock." And Willow, I kid you not, just starts crying. So such it was that 5 minutes later, we're sitting on the couch, Willow's happily eating a marshmallow, and I'm feeling very dumb. It's me, I'm evil, I'm the one Jesus was talking about. In these verses, Jesus is moving ask, seek, and knock. He's moving this teaching into the world of prayer. He's saying, now it's on the door of your Father in heaven that you are asking, seeking, and knocking. And so first off, before I say anything else, let me just say that there is a beautiful, self-evident simplicity to this passage. If you read this and just thought something like, the kingdom of heaven I could experience that kingdom on earth if I persistently pursue God in prayer. If you thought that, yes, write that down, that's good. There is a beautiful childlike simplicity to this passage that is just simply there. However, this is also one of those passages that the more you think on it, study on it, meditate on it, the more richness you discover in this. Again, from the Divine Conspiracy, Dallas Willard calls this passage the inner texture of the kingdom life. He says that this is the very end of the Sermon on the Mount. And he says, Jesus is pulling everything together right now. He says, if you have taken Jesus' teaching up to this point and have accepted it and internalized it, you have accepted the blessed life as Jesus describes in Matthew chapter 5 in the Beatitudes. If you have gone through and you are living your life as salt and light, the way Jesus imagined it, if you have started to wage war on the forces of anger and lust and honesty in your life, if you get to those places and you are actively trying to follow the way of Jesus, when you get to ask, seek, and knock, a dimension is opened up for you. And so I want to tell you how to work through it. Willard is telling you that there's actually kind of like a fireworks show going on, and I want to show you how to get there. So here's how you go deeper into this passage. First off, we're looking at Matthew 7, and I want you to just mentally zoom out from Matthew and imagine the New Testament as a whole. Throughout the New Testament, echoes of the Sermon on the Mount are going to be everywhere. Paul is going to reference this like crazy. Peter's going to talk about this. But more than anybody, James, the half-brother of Jesus, is going to talk about the Sermon on the Mount. This was a fun thing to read. I didn't know this, but I'm in a moment of life right now where I've recently read the Sermon on the Mount 50 times because of Summit's reading plan. So if you're in a similar boat, I would encourage you, if the Sermon on the Mount is really familiar to you right now, it could be really cool for you to take a side adventure into the book of James and just see the echoes in there. Scholars all over the place point this out. Tim Mackey has a really cool line about this. He's the dude from the Bible Project. Tim Mackey says that James is functionally the first commentary of the Sermon on the Mount ever written. Pretty cool. So check this out. This is from James chapter 1. This is him riffing on the topic of asking in prayer. I'm going to read you two verses, verses 5 and 17. James, the half-brother of Jesus, writes this. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. He later writes, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. Do you hear the echoes of ask, seek, and knock in here? Like it's all kind of there. James talks about asking. He talks about being given. The Father is there. The Father is generous. But notice that James slips something in there that was not in the Sermon on the Mount. James is assuming that when you are asking God in prayer, what are you asking him for? Wisdom. He slides that word wisdom in there. So put it back into Matthew chapter 7. Jesus up to now has been saying relationships are hard. And from a human level, it is really easy to fall into the death traps of condemnation, forcing others, and manipulating. And he says, it's almost like he's saying, I don't know how you guys do relationship without my guidance. It's, what is James' answer here? James says, what do? You ask for wisdom. So in other words, you put yourself into a posture of being dependent on God. Asking, seeking, and knocking in God's presence looks like, I am dependent on you. Again, from a horizontal level, asking, seeking, knocking is the posture of humility. But before God, it is one of dependence. It is a new way of life where on the daily basis, you pray, Jesus, show me what I do not see. Teach me the things that I cannot know. Lead me towards the things I would never go towards on my own. It's the Lord's Prayer all over again. Jesus taught us to pray, not my will, but yours be done. Jesus, would it be that the kingdom comes and your will is done right here in my life as it is in heaven? When we ask, seek, and knock, that's a posture we're putting ourselves in. It is full dependence on God. And this kingdom posture is going to grow the kingdom fruit of becoming like Jesus. Jesus said, I'm going up to heaven. I want you to carry on my work. Go and make disciples of all nations. I think this is what it looks like, a life that is defined by full dependence on God. And in our prayers, when we are persistently getting to God in that ask, seek, knock, our prayers many times are not answered. It feels like Jesus is saying an absolute thing, like ask and it will be answered. But if you look at the life of Jesus, you know that not even that guy's prayers, not all of his prayers got answered. There was a time where Jesus prayed to the Father, let this cup pass from me. And that was not what happened. In that moment, when Jesus himself got a no from God, he pressed in harder than ever. That is the number one time in the whole Bible we see Jesus getting intense in the presence of God, is when he started to feel like that his thoughts, that the plans were not happening the way he's praying for them. So I heard these verses compared to the story of Solomon this week. Maybe this is a cool connection for you. In the story of Solomon, this is out of 1 Kings 3, God asks Solomon, he says, you can ask for anything you want and I will give it to you. Solomon famously asks for wisdom. He says, give me a listening ear that I may discern the best way to lead your Israelites. I heard it said that in Matthew chapter 7, God is offering that to all of us. He is saying, ask me for anything and I will give it to you. So if you've ever kind of wondered how you would do in that Solomon test, like I have wondered, this is it. You just think back and say, what are the kinds of things we pray for? Am I a person who prays for wisdom? Or are we the kind of people who find ourselves more often praying for a raise, or a better job, or a better car, or a relationship, or a college to accept us? These are all great things to have, but God, like Jesus is saying, pray for wisdom. Pray for my sight. God loves the people around you more than you could ever possibly know. And he says, share that love for others. It's the posture of dependence. When I am weak, he is strong. So what would this look like in your life this week? I came up with 3 ideas that I thought maybe this could just be helpful for you as you imagine how to apply this teaching in your world. The first idea is, before you decide, ask. I think the typical way we pray is like a running and gunning kind of way. Like, Lord, I have made plans, like, Would you just bless them? And it feels like we are moving at the speed of sound. And I think there's something really sweet and really helpful about saying, like, before you get to the place of laying down plans, forming opinions, making judgments, what if you got to the presence of God first and said, Lord, it's actually wisdom I need. Would you help guide my thoughts and my mind here? Next idea, I thought, if you're confused, seek. Many of us have been put in a position before where we actually prayed for wisdom, like we did everything right, and we felt like we actually didn't get any wisdom. We felt still pretty stranded and pretty confused. I'm seeing some nods of affirmation in the room, like this is a thing we experience. In that space, when Jesus was there, he asked for something and the Father did not answer him. We see Jesus press in harder than ever. Asking, seeking, and knocking get more intense, and I just wonder what it would look like if you started to intensify your prayers when you felt confused. It went from just asking to maybe you were supplementing with something like fasting or bowing. Like, what would it look like to really press in right there? I think that many of us have the habit of unplugging when we feel like our sight is not God's sight, but I think God wants the opposite thing for us. Last idea is, if you are afraid, knock. This one I just know from being a parent. My daughter Willow has been on a string of nightmares recently, and around 10:30 p.m. every night, she comes barreling across the house and bangs on our door. I'd like to think she's looking for her strong father, but no, she's looking for her mom. Melody's the favorite parent here. I accept that. The invite from God is the same. Often, you know the kinds of things you're supposed to be saying or doing, moving towards, treating those around you. And it is simply a matter of courage and obedience that you need to follow through. And so, what would it look like if when you feel afraid, you knocked on God's door and say, like, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm not even asking for wisdom, but Lord, like, would you give me the courage and obedience I need to do your will today? I think put these three things together, and it's like, this I think is what dependence looks like. Wherever you're at in your day, in a decision, in a relationship, there's always a space to reach in and say, like, Lord, would you guide my thoughts, guide my mind? So pulling all these things together to say, I want the posture. Don't let the posture of your life follow the way of the world. The way of the world says condemn, force, manipulate. But the way of Jesus is saying approach actually in humility. Let your life be defined by a dependence on God, because people can feel that stuff. You know intuitively when someone walks up to you and they have your best in mind. Jesus is like, you can walk in that all of the time. And when you approach others from that place of humility, you see kingdom fruit growing all over the place. You can offer wise counsel. You have a better listening ear. It is not anxious to be around you. And so we get to the very end of Matthew chapter 7. And with all this context in mind, just watch how much more powerful the golden rule is here, following ask, seek, and knock. This is how Jesus summarizes everything up to this point. He says, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. Everything up to this point could be caught up in the postures of humility and dependence. Walk with open hands and your eyes on God. Jesus says the way of God here is to be quick to listen and slow to speak. When you do these things, you are offering people the fruit of heaven. And so when I thought about this week, I was like, okay, do to others as I would have them do to me. What would I have people do to me? And I thought, you know what my number one hope is that I would experience in a day? Is my number one hope is that people would act towards me the way God would act towards me. That they would look at me with deep compassion. That they would look at me and ask questions rather than forcing out a condemnation or some manipulation. I don't want to feel like someone's puppet. I want to feel like someone's friend. I want to feel like people are walking alongside me in humility for my best, drawing me close to Jesus. And Jesus' advice to all of us this morning is go and be that to others. It will not feel like you won an argument, but it will feel like the kingdom of heaven was just brought to bear right in front of you. This is a hallmark of Jesus' teaching. Jesus often says things like, when you lose your life, you will find it. Die so that you may live. Take up your cross every day, because when you do that, it's not just that you become a better human, it's that you get to experience the presence and the power of Jesus in your life right now. I know there are people all over this room that there are tricky relationship situations in your life. Maybe they've been going on for years. I know there are people around this room where you're feeling like, I feel socially awkward. I don't feel like I am wise. And the promise of Jesus is like, it's actually not on you. When you lean into the power and presence of God, you get advice, you get a listening ear, you get a presence that is actually not your own. You get to carry on the ministry of Jesus and bring that to others. This is the way of Jesus, to walk in humility and dependence, saying, not my will, but yours be done. Lord, could I see kingdom fruit all over the place? And this is the kind of person that the Sermon on the Mount is shaping you to be. One who says, not my will, but yours be done. Would you lay aside my will, my temper, my desires, my proclivity to lie or be dishonest, and flip those things on their head, turn my eyes towards you each and every day, where I can find life, peace, rest, and grace. Would you guys pray with me? Jesus, those are the things we want. When we ask and seek and knock, Lord, we want to see this life the way you see it. We want to see other people the way you see them. And we want to see ourselves the way you see us. Lord, you call us sons and daughters of a king. You call us heirs to the kingdom, heirs to the promise. And so, Lord, would we walk today with lightness, knowing that this stuff is not on our shoulders? This stuff is in your hands. Would you teach us radical humility, radical dependence? And through those things, would we be a people that show radical love to each other? We love you, Jesus. We ask that your kingdom come and your will be done here in Spokane as it is in heaven. We love you. It's in your name. All of these Summit U people said, amen. Would you guys stand with me? After the service, I would really encourage you. We're going to have a crew of people up here by the stage, and their desire is to pray with you. I think one of the coolest things you could do this morning is before you dip out and grab a donut and hit the road, come hit a prayer with these guys. May we be women and men who are marked first and foremost by our love for others. May we be women and men that every day of our lives, we are shaped and formed into the patience and humility of Jesus. And may we be women and men who every day would stand up straight, hold our hands out in front of us, and look to the throne of heaven where there is goodness and grace. It's been great to be with you this morning. Have a great rest of your day. Sixth graders, welcome to church again. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much for joining us online today. We really hope that either through the message or through worship, you received something that resonated with your experience. If you're wondering, what's next for me at Summit and how do I get plugged in, we would love to walk with you through that online Connect card and find your next step at Summit. Whether that's through receiving prayer, joining a community group, or finding a team to serve on, we'd love to help you find that. If you'd like to watch previous messages, you can find those on any of our online streaming platforms, including YouTube. If you're here in Spokane, we would love to invite you to join us in person to really experience that gospel community together. We would love to meet you face to face. And if you aren't local, we encourage you to find a church within your community so that way you can also experience that gospel community. We love you so much, and we hope you have a great week.